So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an interesting video on transits for now up to mid-September. Okay, some of you may already be dealing with these particular things, but I wanted to show you this based on my last video of aspects, how aspects work, right? So I'm going to show you with each ascendant how these particular transits kind of affect you. So you get, even though it's between now until mid-September, but you will get the idea. Okay, so let's start with Aries. Okay, so here's Aries ascendant, right? And you have Saturn in the 12th house, and you have Mars right now around 17 degrees. Okay, so for Aries ascendant, you also have to understand Saturn is retrograde. And Mars is looking at Saturn. Saturn is the 10th Lord sitting in the 12th house right now, transiting into the 12th house for Aries ascendant. Okay. So just by this particular placement, what is it that we see? Well, it's very simple. The one thing you will see, and I'm going to explain why. Definitely such a person see a lot of roadblocks in their career. Somebody's trying to start some project. Somebody's trying to start some business. It's going to have the major roadblocks, including even, you will see this, issues with your bank. Issues with your bank cards. Delay in getting money. That's what's going to be happening. Because number one, your 10th and 11th Lord, both, is in the 12th retrograde. Okay? But if you notice, Saturn's aspect, the third aspect of Saturn is on the second house. Because Saturn looks at the second house. But guess what's happening? It's not just Saturn looking at the second house. Mars aspects Saturn. So Mars's energy, again, this is the energy flow, is going to Saturn, and through Saturn is taking a segue. It's taking like a connect flight with Saturn to the second house. And because of this, the person with the Aries ascendant is dealing with the most frustration till mid-September, around like till September 14th. That's when Mars, I believe, enters into Libra. Okay. But why this is more significant? Because you have two planetary energies, two malefic planetary energies going to the second house, which also shows one will deal with either cough, cold. One may even have issues with their diet, what they're eating. Whatever Aries ascendant is eating right now, they're not going to be happy with it. They're not going to be pleased with it. Because whatever they eat here goes to the esophagus here, and into the digestive tract where they have Mars. Extra fire. Okay. So this is what Aries is going to be dealing with. Next, Taurus. So for Taurus, Saturn is in the 11th house. It's retrograde, right? Mars is in the 5th house. Okay, so one thing you will see right now, as much as Taurus person, since Saturn entered the 11th house, would experience increase in their social circles, increase in notoriety, increase in being noticed. The one issue that they deal with, it's criticism. They will be nitpicked and criticized. They feel like that their reputation is more on a windy road than a straight line. That's number one. The other thing, the Taurus ascendant individual would also be dealing with issues connected with their bodily heat. Windiness increases in a person. The heat increases in a person. Taurus person can also deal with like fever. Taurus ascendant will deal with too much of exhaustion. during this time because Mars looks at Saturn. And then Saturn is looking at the ascendant. So through Saturn, Mars looks at Saturn, and both of their energies end in the second house or in the ascendant in Taurus. And especially Taurus, again, naturally being the second house lord, being in the first house. Whatever they eat, they somehow tend to choose the wrong thing to eat that affects their body. Okay? And especially the frustration that comes in is that the Taurus person is not able to find that solution because Saturn is retrograde. Okay? Saturn is kind of like working in a very higher energy. Its energy is extremely strong towards the earth. And because this is also your fame, recognition, reputation, so this, like I said, because of Mars, that gets hurt. Okay? But again, this is temporary. Till September 14th, 15th, then Mars moves on. And again, even though Mars will look at the ascendant with its 8th aspect, it's no longer taking that extra energy of Saturn to look at the ascendant. And especially because Mars is looking at the ascendant, being the 7th and 12th lord, expenses come in on behalf of either travel, career. And one also gets blamed by their spouses, their partner during this particular time. Okay? So now we move on to Gemini. Okay? So for Gemini, Saturn is here, retrograde. Okay? The routines that you like to do, because Gemini with Pisces in the 10th house, they like to do things, just routine, repetitive things. That's what they enjoy. Right now, Saturn is screwing up that. The routine is not so much, in their favor. And then Mars is in the 4th house, looking at Saturn. Okay? And so the same energy of Saturn goes to the 12th house, goes to the 7th house, goes back to the 4th house. Okay, so naturally for Gemini, you will see something will break in the home. You'll have to fix it. This also shows that one will have to deal with some form of either medical bill, medical expenses, because expenses right there. Mars is saying, I'm bringing expense related to health. You may even get into extra debt and expense related to social events, social circles. Because these two lords' energy is looking at Saturn, and Saturn is then looking at the 12th house. You will see Gemini people will complain about their expenses since last month all the way till mid-September. Okay, and because their both energies are in the 7th house, because Mars is naturally will also aspects the 4th house, but it's also getting Saturn's, it's influencing Saturn with its 7th aspect. So Saturn 10th aspect onto the 7th house is actually much more intense. It's not just Saturn's 10th aspect going to the 7th house. Mars is saying, I'm giving you my energy, now take it to the 10th house. That means disputes happen with the spouse. And disputes happen because of either relatives, because of debt, because of some conspiracy controversy. Okay? It can even happen on behalf of your premium social circles. Okay? So that's Gemini. Cancer. Saturn is here, retrograde. Mars is in the 3rd house. Okay? So then Mars is looking at Saturn with its 7th aspect. And because of this energy, Saturn is sending that aspect to 11th house. And Saturn, because of through Mars's energy, sends the aspect to the 6th house. So on one end, we see this is the time one can get into disputes with their elder sibling. One will have some form of a delay, hard time dealing with social events, social circles. Okay. Also during this time period, you will see that you will tend to get gains, but then those gains will also flush into expenses as well, because Saturn is retrograde. It wants to bring in gains, but then Mars's energy is looking at it. Those gains will go towards children, because Mars is the 5th lord and 10th lord. Somehow you will buy something related to your profession. For children, you'll have to spend money. Okay? Or even for your education. So gain comes in, but Mars takes that for Cancer. So naturally, right now Saturn retrograde in the 9th house and Mars looking at Saturn, you will see many, if not all Cancer ascendant will have the hardest time trying to pursue their penance, their sadhana, their meditation, their prayers, regardless of your religion. Especially Saturn is retrograde in the 9th house. Anything higher, more divine that you're trying to pursue, hurdles are going to be there. When Mars leaves, it's going to easy up on those hurdles. But those hurdles are going to be there. So if you have been doing some form of long meditation, you would somehow, you'll be like, that's it, I can't do it, because somehow some disturbance will come in that particular time period for Cancer ascendant. Then comes Leo. So for Leo, Saturn goes into the 8th retrograde. Okay. Mars is in the 2nd house looking at Saturn. Okay. Saturn's energy takes Mars's quality, puts it onto the 10th house. And it's also same energy is going into the 5th house. So frustration in studies. Okay. Obstacle and issues in your studies. Right now, obstacle issues will also be there while Mars is looking if one is trying to conceive. So if you're trying to conceive, you might want to wait till after September 14th. So criticism with the bosses will be seen. Verbal criticism, because Mars is in the 2nd house. And that energy is transferring to Saturn, who's retrograde, who's naturally the significator of a career, and looks at the 10th house. And Taurus is there, which is naturally of speech. So this is why you will see, and especially this is probably also the time period where most stress comes in. Okay, related to work. And at the same time, you will see, because Mars is the 4th and 9th lord, naturally this particular Mars will show that you will be dealing with issues of home in your work. Spouse calls at work, gets mad about something. Okay. You will decide on some long distance journey, or trying to decide on some long distance journey while you're in work. You will also have, of course, with married couple, this is going to be the period that health issue with one of the in-laws would be taking place. Especially they can have some injury to the feet. They will deal with cracks in the feet, scratches or some kind of a marks in the feet can happen with them. And you will receive some form of like this cold behavior coming through in-laws during this particular time. Okay. So that is Leo. Because look, we can look at a whole lot more, but I just simply wanted to show you how this is working. Saturn retrograde here. Mars, okay, is in the ascendant looking at the 7th house. Now here Mars can energize. So obviously, if you see Mars is looking at Saturn, Saturn's going to look at the 9th house through Mars. Okay. So this energy is going towards the 9th house. That means a person is going to try to take a long distance journey. This actually is a period where a lot of energy is there towards meeting a lot of people, interacting with a lot of people, with dating, with relationships. But they don't last. Why? Because Saturn is retrograde. Whoever you meet comes, something doesn't work out, they'll leave, especially for those people who are single. But one thing that Mars and Saturn aspect does here, because Saturn is the 6th lord, Mars is the 8th lord. If you interact with someone, especially whether you're having your one night stands, whether you're getting intimate, you want to be extra protected here. Okay. In case you contract something, even something simple as a cold. Okay. So till 14th, you want to be careful with that particular part. On the other hand, Mars is the 3rd lord and the 8th lord, looking at Saturn in the 7th house. So obviously it's going to bring some form of argument, dispute, error picking between the person and their spouse on behalf of either travel, in-laws, or siblings. You will also see spouse is going to desire to change their communication devices, because the lord of the communication device, Mars, is being aspected by back retrograde Saturn, and it's looking at Saturn back. And Saturn is the 12th lord from the 7th house of expense, sitting in the 7th house. You will also see during this time period, spouse may even desire to travel, but there will be certain obstacles that can come about. Long distance travel. Even issues with the father may happen during this time, related to these particular 2 houses. Also, you will also see one may get a lot of criticism through the in-laws. Some form of error picking can happen by the in-laws. They can nitpick you about something, error pick you about something, and you will feel that you're being criticized here. And their communication is very direct and straightforward because it's Mars. Your in-laws are ruled by Mars. Okay. Then, Libra. So Saturn is here, retrograde. Mars is here in the 12th house, looking at Saturn. Okay. First of all, Saturn is the 4th and 5th lord. So right now, one may be dealing with some plumbing issues. One is also going to deal with expenses or debts connected with the home. Okay, especially related to electrical things, electrical wires. Or you're trying to fix something that has gone haywire related to some light fixture. The other thing, because Saturn's aspect is on the 8th house, as well as the 3rd house. Okay. Here, sudden travels can happen. Okay. Health issues with in-laws can happen because of this Mars aspect, who's now also looking at the 8th house. Mars will also can force you to deal with some issues related to insurance. Whether it's vehicle insurance, whether it's life insurance, whether it's medical insurance, you're going to be dealing with those particular issues, including some financial issues connected with the in-laws would become active. This is also going to be the period where your children can get into fights, either with you or within their school. Like if you have young kids, some disputes, some things can take place here. Okay, why is that? Because again, Mars aspects. But the fun thing is to look at the 8th and the 3rd. This person, out of frustration, can have a very harsh communication or phone call with somebody. Back and forth text messages with somebody. Okay. And it'll be because this person's trying to exert their philosophical ideas on someone. And they'll become very, adamant about wanting to text their belief system. Okay. So this is for Libra. Scorpio. Saturn is here, retrograde. Mars is here in the 11th in Virgo, looking at Saturn. Okay. But Saturn's aspect is on the 7th house. Saturn is also looking at the 2nd house. So first of all, Scorpios will deal with quite a bit of frustration in dealing with banks. Okay. Dealing with banks and money. You're waiting for your credit card, somehow it's being delayed. It was never shipped. You're trying to open up a bank account, somehow there's some obstruction there. At the same time, Mars from the 11th house this time looks at Saturn, who's looking at the 7th house. Mars is also the ascendant in the 6th house. Okay. So especially there would be some issue in your relationship because of some social event, some form of gatherings, including health. Okay, so health will affect the part of marriage and relationships, including because Saturn is the 4th and 3rd lord. Okay, and Mars is looking at it, especially somehow because your younger brother said something, or father's brother said something, hits your spouse. They feel like it's because your siblings are saying something and mother is saying something. This is why you're doing this. This is why you're verbally speaking to me, because Taurus is, again, speech, which is now in the 7th house. This may not be on a big scale. This may be on a small scale, could be on a big scale, could be on a medium scale. That will obviously determine what type of a dasha and progression the person is running into at this particular point. Okay. But Mars is naturally, again, is in Virgo. It's in a fighting mode while it looks at Saturn. And Saturn then sends its aspect onto the 7th house. Okay. Sagittarius. Saturn, Mars, and it's retrograde. Mars is looking at Saturn. Saturn looks at the 6th house. So here, mother will get into some tough with her siblings. Okay. The other thing, because of lot of criticism and error picking and harsh attitude by the bosses, okay, will cause you to deal with stress of money till like I said, till mid-September. And at the same time, because Mars looks at the 4th house, Saturn goes into the 6th house, one may also get into debt related to vehicles. One has to put things on their credit card because of what's happening with the home or with the vehicle. This is also the time period where trying to borrow money becomes hoop jumping. You have to repeatedly do things in order to be able to borrow some money because of Saturn's retrogression. And especially money can be spent, again, like I said, because of Mars and Saturn naturally, in some dealing with some issue related to the property or home or apartment. Okay. But especially because, remember, Saturn is looking at the 6th house and the ascendant. This is why also I said stress. They both are, not only Mars is looking at the ascendant, but I want you to look at this. Mars sends its aspect to Saturn, which the 10th aspect, which is a very karmic aspect, goes into the ascendant. Stress of work is higher than any other month this year. You can even judge it. Okay. Now, this can be great position if you're a lawyer, because you're naturally fighting. You're aligned with your chart. You're an athlete. You're in sports. Some kind of a combat sport. Yeah, this can be a great period to gain through that challenge. But on regular basis, yes, it'll bring stress. Okay. Capricorn ascendant. Saturn is retrograde in the 3rd house. Mars is looking at Saturn. Saturn looks at the 5th house. Saturn looks at the 12th house. Your speech is going to be very harsh towards your children. Okay. Mars will also distract you in your education related to social events or things connected with home and mother. This is also the period if one is trying to achieve something creatively and is technical, you'll have to do it repeatedly to achieve that. Okay. Definitely, obviously, here we see that any foreign travel, you're going to have to make repeated efforts to go to a foreign travel. But also expenses on behalf of some religious activity can happen. Education can happen. Or pilgrimage can happen. You may even owe money to the bank because it's Sagittarius. Like somehow you get a notice that, oh, your this and this is increased. So now you have to spend more money on that. And especially because of all of these things, third house is strongly getting affected, where a person, first of all, their communication you will see with Capricorn, very direct, very straightforward, to the point. But when Saturn is in the third house of effort and is retrograde, actually one can put less effort and achieve more. Okay. You will also see, because Saturn is in the third house, one will go back and forth. Like before they get to the door, they'll come back because they forgot something. Because third houses exit from the home. And Saturn is retrograde. Saturn is going to say, well, you forgot this. You forgot your phone. You forgot this paperwork. Come back, get it. So a lot of back and forth will happen, especially because Saturn rules the second house as well. Most likely it'll have something to do with your money part. You forgot your wallet. You forgot your purse. So you're going to see these things happen. Okay. Aquarius. Saturn is retrograde into the second house. Okay. Mars is here. So Mars aspects Saturn, and through Saturn aspects here. Saturn aspects here. Okay. So naturally one can get into dispute with the mother. And it'll be over either expenses or travel. Or it'll be over food. Okay. Saturn from the 8th house, Mars from the 8th house, looking at Saturn who looks at the 4th house, definitely some issue with the toilet will happen. Toilet or bathroom. Between now, like this entire month of August, up to September 14th. And especially because Mars from the 8th is looking at Saturn and Saturn is looking at the 11th house. You can actually gain suddenly. Mars can actually give you sudden gains here. Okay. And on the other hand, because of this aspect, you can say something to your social circle or in a social circles that will create some kind of a controversy related to your work or profession. So be careful of what you say. Because Aquarius are known to get into conspiracies and controversies related to their profession. And right now it's going to energize that with the speech of Saturn. Saturn can be quite cold with its speech. Saturn can be very soft, romantic as well with its speech. Because see, Saturn is exalted in the 7th house. It knows what to say to make that union work. But when it's retrograde, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying right now. People don't realize Saturn is actually very romantic in terms of taking care of the partner. Because remember, you guys are only looking at Saturn as profession. You need to understand Saturn exalts in the 7th house. Why? What's the purpose? Well, the purpose is actually it wants you to be responsible for someone else besides yourself. It wants you to give yourself in service to someone else. But in order to do that, in order to attract someone, you have to be able to have a good speech. So you will see Saturn in the 7th house actually can give a person excellent way of communicating to attract a person and bind them for that lifelong matrimonialship until divorce court does us apart. Okay? So that's that. And then Pisces, Saturn in the ascendant, retrograde. Mars is here. Mars from the 7th house looks at Saturn. Saturn looks at 3rd house. Due to something between your spouse, you can have some form of a hard communication with siblings, and especially over text messages or emails or pretty much phone calls. Maybe your spouse said something to say something to someone. Okay. Also, spouse will also can disturb, like they can cut the travel, short distance travel. Or because of the dispute between you and the spouse, you will no longer either take the journey or will delay it. You'll have to make some repeated efforts to get some either communication going, traveling going. Because right now, the partner, the spouse is very, very critical, very error picking, very nitpicky. And so that effect on Saturn will affect your third house of communication style. You can literally, that frustration from the partnership, you can take it out on someone else. And it'll naturally be also affecting the career. But here, what we see, Mars, the second lord, ninth lord, actually gives benefits in your career. It can actually bring you wealth and money. However, because it's Sagittarius, somehow you're going to be forced to learn something during this time period related to work. Taking something new, learning some new skill in your work to improve your work so you can improve your income and, of course, your luck. Okay. And because remember, Mars is the ninth lord in the seventh house looking at the ascendant, father might say something to the spouse and spouse will then revert it back to you. They will try to take that out on you. Okay. So this is how, the reason why I'm doing this is again, to show you how these aspects work, this aspect connection works. Okay. So anyway, if you're new to my channel, subscribe below so you don't miss this type of videos. And we'll continue with our series by tomorrow. And I'm going to be uploading Aquarius by this Friday because I uploaded Capricorn blank chart prediction last 2 weeks ago. Okay. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.